Are you starting in filmmaking, or maybe you're just starting on YouTube? Or you're just looking to change it up just a little bit on which editing software that you should use? Well, in this video, I'm going to explain the 7 different reasons why I chose Davinci Resolve. Let's go. Hey, what's up guys? I'm Ray, this is Lit with Ray. I now like to make videos on creativity and technology. So if this is your first time here, or maybe it's not your first time here, consider subscribing down below. And make sure that you stick around until the end, because I actually have a bonus tip for you. So one of the first questions that I typically get when people find out that I have a YouTube channel is, why? Just kidding. What editing software do you use? Because I know the choice can be super overwhelming, you don't know where to begin or where to start. I want to rewind about 2.5 years ago. At the time, I was just starting out on YouTube. I remember recording my very first video, which still has not seen the light of day. I'm sitting in bed in an Airbnb, and I'm just searching online for all the different software that I could use. At the time, I'm using a $300 Walmart laptop. I remember even though I was broke, I spent $50 upgrading the RAM in it because I needed it to perform just a little bit better. But I started looking at the different softwares that were out there. At the time I was using Linux. I came across KineMaster. It looked kind of cool, but also somewhat complicated. I also saw Adobe Premiere Pro, there was Final Cut Pro, iMovie. The problem is that those ones relied either on having Windows or Mac. And so at that time, I wasn't really comfortable with using Windows or Mac just because I was using Linux for so long. I did inevitably end up switching to Windows, but then I came across Davinci Resolve. Davinci Resolve for me really stood out for several different reasons. And those are the reasons that I'm actually going to get into right now. I'm really hoping that this helps answer your questions, and hell, maybe you'll decide to get Davinci Resolve. I don't know. So starting off with number 1, major production studios use it. Gravity, John Wick 3, The Avengers, Age of Ultron. Hell, even one of the Star Wars movies was done with this. That's pretty badass. Star Wars is awesome. Thing is that more and more studios are going to be transitioning over to it. Davinci Resolve started out as a color grading software, and they've actually transitioned from that space into the nonlinear editing mode. And their heavy competition right now is Adobe Premiere Pro. More on that later though. My second reason was because there's a ton of tutorials on it. How many times have you tried to do something new and realized you need a tutorial for it? Well, just like trying to do your own taxes, chances are that with any new software, you're probably going to have to look at some sort of tutorial while you're trying to figure it out. Especially for me, because at the time I'd never used any sort of editing program whatsoever. No idea what it was I was doing. So there were a few different ones that I came across which helped me out. Maybe they'll help you too. First one was JRTV. He focuses on fusion and graphics. Some of his work is really cool. That was the very first channel that I figured out because I was like, hey, I need graphics too. Then I came across JLitman. He focuses mostly on the editing process and Davinci Resolve as a whole. More recently, I came across Kazi's channel. Kazi is a colorist. He owns his own post studio, the Post Village, so I've been following his content for the last several months and actually recently enrolled in his freelance colorist masterclass, which so far is pretty awesome. If you guys want to see where that coloring comes from in Hollywood movies, definitely check him out. Reason number 3 is because it's easier. Now I know what you're saying, dude. No, it's not. Yes, it is. Sure, it has a ton of different features, but you don't need to use every single one of them. I don't. Most people don't. But they're there like a tool in case you need them. Think about when you go to change a tire. You're not going to raid every single tool in your toolbox to go ahead and do that. It doesn't make sense. It's inefficient. Well, just like that, you don't need every single tool with this. Or imagine the first time that you sat behind the wheel of a car. I remember when I was 18 years old, my friend Matt at the time, he parked his mom's car at the top of a hill and we switched sides. I remember sitting down and checking everything. Check the mirrors, of course, put on the seatbelt, turn on the ignition, you see all the little dials do their shifty things. Then you switch the shift into drive and you take your foot off of the brakes. And I remember the car rolling down the hill, and at 15-20 miles an hour, it was going way too fast for me. That was my first time ever doing it. And for me, it was a very scary, very uncomfortable situation. Well, that's how editing software, or really anything that's new, is. That's one of the things that I'm really addicted to, is trying new things, just because of that uncomfortable feeling. I love to experiment with things. Hey guys. Hey guys. Yeah. That's really why I feel like it's super easy. You don't want to overcomplicate it. You don't want to focus on the bigger aspects of it. Just use what you need to use, nothing more, nothing less, and you'll come out with great videos. So reason number 4, there's a very active support community. Blackmagic Design actually involves people in the decision-making process. They consider people's suggestions, and they're there for help and actually answering people's feedback. There's a lot of people who use Davinci Resolve already, so of course with an active community of people who are actually using the software, you can get some really valuable insight from it, as well as using Google, of course. There's a lot of companies that don't care about their communities. They don't focus on their why, they just focus on their what. Oh, look what we came out with. Cool. I don't care. They make it super complicated, they don't listen to feedback. It's super frustrating. When I watch people's videos on Adobe Premiere Pro, I'm just completely lost. Now, obviously I haven't invested the time into Adobe Premiere Pro, because, it costs money. For me, it looks like I'm gonna have to use a lot more tools and a lot more resources just to get the same effect that I'm getting right now. That brings me to number 5. So number 5, there are multiple tools built in. You have the entire Adobe suite built into Davinci Resolve, essentially. Obviously, it's not the same exact thing. With this, you have a media manager, you have a cut page, which I almost never use. This is if you're cutting really quick commercials or TV shows or things that are live. It's a very quick process to cut through it. Again, I don't use it. Then you have the edit tab. This is the non-linear editing portion of it, where you can have multiple tracks, cut them up, slice them, dice them, do whatever you're gonna do. You can include multiple audio tracks as well, which brings you to the next tab, Fairlight. Fairlight Audio is a complete audio solution. Definitely worth checking out. The last part of it is the delivery page. A delivery page is really cool because you can export in multiple formats. You can export to other softwares just like Adobe Premiere Pro or even Final Cut Pro. But you can also upload to YouTube, which means I get to skip an extra step. So that is pretty awesome. So my 6th and my most nerdy reason it works on Linux. As I mentioned before, Linux is something that I was using, that I'm still using. I use it as much as possible, and the fact that it'll actually work on Linux is something that truly drives me, because I feel like more and more software needs to. Believe it or not, your cell phone uses Linux. It's based off of Linux. Your Android and your Apple. Yes, the back end, guess what, is Linux, and even Windows is making that transition. This is one of the first things that popped out for me on Davinci Resolve, is that it works with Linux. And there is a caveat to that. It was built to work on CentOS and Red Hat Enterprise Linux. There are people who've gotten it to work on other flavors of Linux as well. According to Blackmagic Design's website, you do need a little bit more RAM than you do with the Windows or the Mac version. I have to be honest, I struggled quite a bit trying to get Davinci Resolve installed onto Linux. So unless you have the studio version, it's not going to export H.264, which is YouTube quality videos. There are other tools that you can use to convert whatever videos that you do export, like FFmpeg. I can never FFmpeg. We'll just, we can go with that. But everything is transitioning towards Linux these days, so it's definitely worth considering. Even if you guys aren't super nerdy about Linux like me, it's still something to keep an eye on, especially because this is where the future is going. So my 7th reason is upgradability. Blackmagic Design is constantly rolling out new features. As I said before, they have a very active support community. While they take a lot of the suggestions that people have, they actually listen to them, and they put those features into the software itself. Now, Blackmagic Design also has a bunch of hardware that's designed specifically for Davinci Resolve. It will work with other software as well. They have different cameras that they put out, there's different broadcast solutions, and they also make this really, really cool thing, which is my next investment, which is the eGPU. It beefs up your current computer with like 3 or 4 extra GPUs, extra graphics cards. Even by upgrading my laptop from the $300 Walmart HP computer to my current Dell, I knocked down my rendering time by about 75%. So the more GPUs that you get, the faster you're going to be able to render, the more graphics that you're going to be able to create, the more things that you're going to be able to do. This is time for the bonus reason. The number one reason for me, which is reason number 8 in this video, is because it's free. Now, they do have a studio version with a couple of extra features on it, which is $300. The cool thing is that you don't need to invest in that. If you do decide to drop $300 on the studio version, it supports every future release from there. So every future version that comes out, you're gonna have full access to it, which is more than you can say for Adobe Premiere Pro. You'll spend $30 a month on Adobe Premiere Pro. After 10 months, you would have already paid for Davinci Resolve. For the last 2 years, I've used Davinci Resolve's free version. Only about a month or two ago, I decided to upgrade to the studio version. And the really cool thing about it is that Davinci Resolve has all these different features, all these different tools installed, whereas with Adobe Premiere Pro, you don't, which is super frustrating. You're gonna install Premiere Pro, then you're gonna have to install Lightroom, then you're gonna have to install After Effects, then you're gonna have to install this and that and that, and it's just too many solutions. Whereas with Davinci Resolve, boom, it's right there. You need a tool, it's right there. I even designed the thumbnail for this video in Davinci Resolve. Maybe we'll explore that a little bit more in the future in another video. In the meantime, guys, really quick question for you. Are you just starting out? Are you already using an editing software? Let me know down in the comments below. I want to hear all about it. Don't forget to smash that like button if you got value out of this. While you're at it, hit the subscribe button with the little bell so you can be notified every time I come out with new videos. With that said, it's been real. I'll catch you guys later. I remember recording my very first video, which still has not seen the light of day. Hey guys! This is my first video, so this is going to be more of an introduction to set the pace for all the videos that are going to follow. Yes, I am recording this in a closet. No, I am not trying to tell you anything secretly. The sound just carries better in here. I've wanted to do this for a while. Knowing what you want and actually doing it, though, are two separate things.